that's better. Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of the Wellington Shire Council for the 2nd of October, and welcome to the gallery, and we haven't got media today, and certainly councillors. Members of the public gallery should note that the Council records and publishes Council meetings via YouTube to enhance the accessibility of Council meetings to the broader Wellington community. These recordings are also archived and may be published on Council's website for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate time during the meeting, members of the gallery may address the Council, at which time their image, comments or submissions will be recorded. Members of the public who are not in attendance at the Council meeting but who wish to communicate with the Council via the webcasting chat room should lodge their questions or comments early in the meeting to ensure that their submissions can be dealt with at the end of the meeting. Please could gallery visitors and councillors ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Please stand for the acknowledgement and prayer. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gunai-Kurnai people, and pay their respects to their elders past and present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the Wellington Shire Council, its councillors, officers, staff and their families. We pray for your guidance in our decisions so that the true good of the Wellington Shire Council may result to the benefit of all residents and community groups. Amen. Item A2, apologies.
Councillor Stevens, Mayor.
Thank you, so noted. Item A3, declaration of conflicts of interest. We have none. Item A4, confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meeting. Councillor Bai.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I move the Council adopt the minutes and resolutions of the Ordinary Council meeting of the 18th of September 2018.
Thank you. Is that motion second? Councillor Rossetti. Is that motion opposed? The motion's unopposed. The motion is carried. Item A5, business arising from previous meetings. None. Item A6, likewise no late items. Item A7, no notice of motion. Item A8, receiving a petition or joint letters. Receipt of a petition Castle's car park. Do we have anybody wishing from the gallery to speak to that? No? So do I have a mover? Councillor Rossetti.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I move the Council receive the attached petition in relation to the Desailly Street car park. The Council and that a response to the petition is also obtained from the Sale Business and Tourism Association, SBTA.
Do I have a second for that? Councillor Bai. Is that motion opposed? The motion's unopposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. We received this petition. It'll lay the table typically for a couple of meetings. It may be responded to earlier. But just as a bit of clarity around it, Mayor, the fact that there's been work done on beautifying our towns and their commercial centres, I think is really good. Looking around many of our towns like Hayfield, Main Street of Sale, down Maffra has been some work done, Stratford, down at Yarram, is terrific. So it encourages people in a tough retail environment to actually come in and shop locally and buy in our local stores. So the work's being done around the car park in beautifying, really important. There's been some work done at the back of, people will call it the Castle's car park, but it's at the back of Graham Chalmers and Cobb & Co stables and the ANZ Bank, the Westpac Bank, that area there. The works being done with planting trees in the middle of the car park have resulted in a change of the use of that car park, for better or worse. It did go out to public consultation. We didn't get a lot of response back about this particular issue, but once the trees were in and there was some cement works put in with plantings, we found that it stopped cars being able to park through where they now can only park head-to-head or tail-to-tail. And this petition centres around that, the inability of those towing trailers to park through when there's the ability to do it, so that the conversations that many of the councillors have had with tradies in particular with their trailers, coming in first thing in the morning to go to the real estate agent or get a haircut, or later in the day. They've said it's impacted them. They can no longer park the way they used to park. Now, we're keen to get the response of the Sale Business and Tourism Association, because obviously they're representing many of the shops down the main street, to get their view. We obviously have the view of the petitioners, and certainly would encourage anyone in the community to come forward and put their view to council as well. There are a number of solutions here. One could be to leave it as it is. One could be to take some of the cement out. One could be to have dedicated long vehicle parking in close to the CBD. We've got no ownership of any of the solutions, but we're certainly keen to examine the issues raised in the petition, but also to get the views from the businesses affected as well. So I thank the petitioners for popping this in to us, and look forward to seeing it processed.
Thank you. Item A9, Advisor Addresses, Presentations and Acknowledgements. I don't believe we have any today. Item A10, Questions on Notice. We have none of those. Item A11, the Mayoral and Councillor Activity Report. Councillor Marr.
I move that the Mayor and Councillor Activity Report be noted.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Hall. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Marr.
This is an overview of the events and meetings that councillors have been involved with and attended over the last month. I was privileged to attend the Gippsland Women in Horticulture Forum that was held at Churchill recently, and I attended with the Mayor and Councillor Ripper, and I feel that we were lucky to actually hear some leaders within the agricultural industry speak, and unsurprisingly they were all very modest voices for the achievements that they have reached over their working life. It's important to support women at this time in the agricultural industries and small business, as they're certainly feeling a lot of stress across the rural sector at the moment. In addition to other activities that councillors have attended, I would like to extend a big thank you to the Johnson family and their management, as they certainly went out of their way of allowing council officers and councillors to inspect their broiler farm at Toongabbie, and it was quite surprising, especially from someone who hasn't had much involvement in the broiler farm business or actually seen something in that way of development. It was eye-opening, and a big thank you to them, and I certainly wish them the best of luck and hope that, well, they are already leaders in that industry within the Wellington Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marr. Item B, Report of Delegates. I don't believe we have any delegates' reports. Item C, Officers' Report. Item C, point 1, Audit Risk Committee Members' Appointment. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council appoint 2 independent members to Council's Audit and Risk Committee, one for a 2-year period commencing of 29th of October. No, that's not right. I think it's the top one, isn't it? No, is that right? That's the correct one? I'm terribly sorry. I thought there was an adjustment to that. My apologies. I'll read that again, and I do apologise. Council appoint 2 independent members to Council's Audit and Risk Committee, one for a 2-year period commencing 29th of October 2018, expiring 28th of October 2020, and one for a 3-year period commencing 29th of October 2018, expiring 28th of October 2021, in accordance with the recommendation in the attached confidential evaluation report at item F1.1 of this council meeting agenda, and 2, I'll take that as read.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Yes, thank you. And I do apologise. There was a slight adjustment to that to make it clearer as to what was going on, and I should have perhaps read it just from my notes. The Audit Committee is a very important part of Council. It's about a group of people who are tasked with the job of looking through the finances of the council, of working out all the bits and pieces, and working out whether we're tracking correctly in terms of a governance and finance perspective. I'd like to pay respect to those people. I think it's a most onerous job to look through the countless strategies and financial documents. I will openly admit it's not something that I would do. But we do have three very good councillors who are on board with that, and I know they all have expertise in that area. And we're very, very good to have members of council staff, but most importantly, outside independent people who are selected because of their expertise and who bring into it outside eyes. And I think the Audit Committee is made stronger by this legislative requirement to have these outside people on it. There is now another 2 people who have gone through an extensive interview process. We do thank them very much for their commitment to the task. They are afforded a small amount of a fee for that, but to be honest, it is such a small amount of money for the amount of work that they do and the value that they give back to our shire. So I thank the appointees for taking on this task.
Thank you, Councillor McCubbin. Moving on to item C2, General Manager Corporate Services, item C2.1, Assembly of Councillors. Councillor Bai.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I move the Council note and receive the attached Assembly of Council records for the period 11th of September 2018 to the 25th of September 2018.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ma. Is that motion opposed? The motion's unopposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Bai, if you're right. Item C2.2, the Audit and Risk Committee minutes. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that Council receive and note the minutes in brief at attachment 1 and the confidential attachment at item F1.2, Audit and Risk Committee minutes for the 30th of August 2018 and para 2 as read.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor McCubbin. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Bai. Not Bai, so Hall.
Thanks, Mayor. Council maintains an Audit and Risk Committee in accordance with Section 139 of the Local Government Act. The Audit and Risk Committee is an independent advisory committee that Councillor McCubbin just recently spoke to. The Council and its primary objective is to assist Council in the effective conduct of its responsibilities for financial reporting and management of risk, maintaining a reliable system of internal controls, etc. The minutes in brief for the Audit and Risk Committee meeting of the 30th of August 2018 are attached. To touch on the activities of this meeting, we note that we have already accepted the Committee's recommendation to adopt financial performance statements in principle at our last meeting. The Committee also considered a number of internal audit reports, including but not limited to management of leisure services, a review of debts and rates, and a review of the Port of Sale project, and along with a report of follow-up of agreed actions from prior year internal audit reports, along with consideration of a number of the VARGO published reports. We also received the Chairman's reports, which set out the activities of the Audit Committee for the previous year. Again, it's appropriate to support what Councillor McCubbin said, to thank in particular the independent members of the Audit Committee for their contribution that they make.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Moving on to item 3, General Manager Development, item 3.1, Council Submission, Alberton Wind Energy Facility. I believe we have somebody from the gallery who wishes to speak. Please come to the podium and state your name for the records. Thank you.
I own a farm down at Alberton. I'm in a group, so I can only speak for myself today, but there's 50 other neighbours, including myself, who are dead set against this. The reason being that it will ruin basically our lives down there, having these 200-metre turbines right near our houses. There's about 100 houses in this footprint for this proposal by Synergy Wind. They're going to sell their project to foreign investors, most likely. So all the income from this project will go offshore and will be left in Alberton there to there's a lot better project offshore from Port Albert. It's 99 times as large in output for electricity. It connects up to the Basslink cable, just like, you know, it's really good, so we could sell power to Tasmania or send it to Melbourne. That's our preferred project. If they're going to build a wind project, this one's 1%. The synergy one's 1% over the top of us, farmers, and in our area, compared to 99 times larger out offshore, where they're going to be so small you'll need binoculars to see them from the shore, and they won't be near anyone's houses. So I just don't think it's a good idea to ruin our lives, and there's about 168 minimum people in the footprint expected to live with this low-level white noise day after day after day. Every time the wind blows, it just drive you crazy. And the flicker, you know, the flashing of the blades in the sunshine, that's not good either. So I just hope you'll think deeply and just think, well, you know, that's just not, doesn't make much sense to put this experiment on us down at Alberton. The place is starting to pick up. I mean, it's been a downtrodden area for many years. It's starting to look better. I've been working with the CMA and we've been replanting rivers. The bird life's quite good down there. It's just not good for the environment, but it's really not good for the people either. And I hope you take that on board and, you know, use some sense, which I'm sure you've got. And I just hope that they don't go ahead with approving this, as it's the kind of project which has been kept very low-key until they let the cat out of the bag and sent letters out to us. But I was never invited to attend any of their meetings. I had to ring Synergy themselves. Then they sent me an option agreement trying to hook me in. I asked my neighbours and no one thought it was a very good idea, and I didn't either, because the turbine they wanted to put in my farm was 30 metres from the roof of my house, the tip of the blade each rotation. And I just thought, you're crazy, you know, like, what, you know, that's just madness. So they'd obviously never done proper research. They just hadn't bothered. They'd used Google Maps and old maps and information, and they'd just gone, oh yeah, we'll just put one there, one there. But apparently there was a meeting 10 years ago to a privy handful of large farmers to see which ones wanted to be, were interested to be into it. And so you've got a handful of farmers down there, not like they paint it like it's a good community wants it, they don't. You've got a handful of farmers who are going to make many, many millions of dollars. One guy I calculated will make about 7 million, so he can just go on permanent holidays, he's fine, he doesn't have to live there. And my neighbours directly, they'll have about 4 turbines, so they can do the same. They can just go on grey nomading around Australia, you know, international even, just living it up, no, not a care in the world. They don't have to live next to it, so yeah. So anyway, that's about about it in a nutshell. But yeah, so I hope you can vote against it, please. Cheers.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Graham James. I live at Gilliandale at the old Gilliandale Hotel. I really want to put on notice to the council that as it stands, this application is non-compliant. The Victorian state guidelines specifically state that houses must be 1 kilometre from a turbine, and according to the Act, that is measured from the closest point of the turbine to the closest point of the house. This company who's done this application is a very shoddy and shonky company, and they have not in fact done their homework. The dimensions that they are quoting are in fact from the centre of the turbine to the centre of people's houses. There is a difference there of 80 metres, and since they've cynically placed wind turbines within 3 metres, that is 1 kilometre and 3 metres of a turbine, there are in fact 13 plus houses which are in reality less than 1 kilometre and for which they have not gained consent as required by the Act. So that's the first issue of compliance. The second one is the noise assessment that they have had done is being prepared on the basis that wind turbines are not placed closer than 5 to 8 turbine diameters within one another. If they are placed within that distance, the computer modelling does not work because the turbulent air from the first turbine enters the second turbine. The wind modelling is based on laminar airflow over the blades. We will not have that because many of the turbines are only 3 diameters apart. It will, in fact, and these turbines are significantly bigger than Bald Hills, and they're significantly closer than Bald Hills turbines to the houses. And already the council is facing litigation at Bald Hills because of noise levels. The noise levels here will probably be double Bald Hills, and the houses will be closer. The council does stand a risk of being held responsible if they pass this application in its current form. The next thing is that the Commonwealth Minister asked for a survey of bird life, etc., over this area. It was supposed to be a comprehensive survey. They've only done a 5-day survey in an off-point time. There was no survey done when the potential for orange-belly parrots or any of the other migrating birds fly across this area. So nobody knows whether they do or don't. They probably don't, but they could also, it could be. And we have a wildlife corridor that has been created along the Albert rivers and the, the Jack River, yeah. There is an effective wildlife corridor up there, and up in Jack River area, there are in fact sea eagles and numerous other species. It's quite a good habitat for the wedge-tail eagles. I think my friend's property's got 3 pair of wedge-tails eagles nesting there. They also have sea eagles. According to their bird surveys, nothing like that exists. We also have flying foxes at our place. According to them, the nearest flying foxes are Bairnsdale. The whole environmental survey that they've submitted to everybody is in fact a heap of, well, no, I won't say, but it's rubbish. I just think this destroys my property. I love the Gilliandale Hotel. It is a historical building. It's surprising how many people we get dropping in all the time. And we will be surrounded in a horseshoe by wind turbines. Our view down to the promontory will just be shattered by a whole row of turbines. It's just, and the noise levels will mean it has no commercial value. And I've been spending a lot of time and money doing this up. It's now basically has no commercial value. And I need to just pull the plug and walk away from it. I think that it will impact council rates. You might be able to wangle some money out of the people who are hosting turbines, but the residents are going to be scun. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation there. Anybody else on that one? No. I'll move on and ask Councillor McCubbin for the
Thank
motion.
you. I'd like to move the following recommendation, that Council approve the submission included in Attachment 1 to the Minister for Planning in relation to planning permit PA 1700284 for the proposed Alberton Wind Farm Energy Facility. 2, Council seek the Minister for Planning's assurance that in the absence of a formal environmental effects statement being required by the State Government, all specific concerns raised in submissions by community members be thoroughly investigated and detailed responses provided. And 3, Council liaised with Synergy Wind to seek a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, to ensure the local community benefits arise from the development should a planning permit be issued. 4. Given the application is being assessed by the State Minister for Planning, Council provide the Member for Gippsland South, Mr Danny O'Brien, with a copy of the Wellington Shire submission, together with all submissions received from the community.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? The motion is opposed. The mover would like to speak to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin by thanking very much the two gentlemen who spoke today. They spoke very clearly and confidently, and I thank them very much for the information that they have provided. The first point that needs to be made very, very clearly here is that Council is not the body that's responsible for passing this permit or not. The permit is in fact now being taken off our hands and is given to the state government. And I think clearly within the application we have ensured that the State Minister for Planning, and particularly our local member Mr Danny O'Brien, is made very much aware of your concerns. And I think that also needs to be acknowledged as well, that there is community angst in regard to this, and that there are real complaints that need investigation by the Minister before this permit is taking place. I'd like to point to point 2, which asks the government to certainly thoroughly investigate and detail the responses provided by the gentleman concerned, and in particular the issues in regard to the environment, the noise levels, the shadow flickering and others. I will state, however, in principle, the Council is very much supportive of both energy needs into the future. One thing is absolutely certain, that this area, like every area, will be needing energy into the future. And also one other thing that's necessary is that we derive those energy from a more cleaner source. I absolutely agree with the gentleman concerned that the offshore wind proposal, the Star of the South, is very, very exciting. But I think there are a need to investigate other types as well, both wind, both PV on tops of roofs and so on. So Council, I guess, in a matter of principle, has no problem with wind energy as a way of developing the energy needs for our future. And certainly that builds into the clean green image that Gippsland currently has. I must admit to holidaying in the Gold Coast, and last week when I was going to my favourite restaurant, there was a sign out the front saying Gippsland beef, being available that I could get for my main meal. It's amazing that even in Queensland, the name Gippsland is synonymous with cleanness and greenness. And I think the idea of using renewable sources rather than the old coal-fired energy sources is certainly contributing to our brand of being a clean, green area. And for that I'm very proud. However, it is important that we assess this properly and appropriately. I am led to understand that there is no boundary these days on development. I may well be wrong, and to be frank, because we haven't needed to, have looked into the precise nature of the regulations as they currently stand. But my understanding is you can still be outside of that 1 kilometre boundary, and you still can be considered. Your views, if you like, can be considered. Well, my advice is that that is the case. Certainly within the 1 kilometre you have to get consent. Outside of the kilometre you don't need to get consent, but you still need to be considered. And so therefore it is appropriate that people who are outside that area put in their submissions, and I believe the Minister should take them into account. Within that 1 kilometre area, I understand there are 2 houses of which the Council has recommended be removed, so that there is absolutely no misunderstanding about whether they should be lived in. And I certainly take on the views of the gentleman concerned, suggesting that the measurements were not done appropriately. I'm sure the Minister should check that out where appropriate. So, whilst the Council in principle agrees with wind power, and on the face of it this can be a very exciting proposal. It provides energy for 45,000 homes, it provides construction jobs, I think if you include downstream jobs, of 270, and of course ongoing employment for 10 to 12. I think another exciting proposal that's brought forward is the community benefit which may arise from the development. And Council is absolutely clear that we wish a memorandum of understanding with Synergy Wind, so that those benefits go clearly to the local community. We understand that's an amount of about $80,000. And certainly to the people involved in this, the farmers on the ground, we do clearly see an advantage for them as well. This is another off-farm resource that they can claim, and as pointed out by the speakers, it's something that can be quite lucrative for them. and my understanding is there's no interference with the current agricultural usage of the land. So it provides local jobs, provides an income stream to the farmers concerned, provides clean green power to the people of Gippsland, and builds on our brand of being a clean green province. So in principle we agree, but again I stress it is the government that will be looking at this, and again I stress it'll be Council's position that the government needs to look very, very closely at the claims that the gentlemen have made to ensure that they are properly recognised. Thank you.
Thank you. With the seconder, Councillor Maher, do you want to speak, or do you want to reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right.
Okay. Councillor Hall, as the opposer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McCubbin, for your detailed explanation in a nice, quite friendly manner. I believe in opposing this that we should be rejecting the application completely. The reasons behind this are long and strong. I'm not going to deal with everything. But there's got 34 wind towers been applied for, 200 metres high. We wouldn't allow 34 homes to be built in that area. We wouldn't allow 34 high-rise development to be built in that area. And yet we're quite happy to put in or approve the submission going down of our general approval of 34 wind towers. It's interesting to look at councils around the Shire, around the state of Victoria, who are quite at risk, or not at risk, at knowledge with previous wind towers. And I look at the Moyne Shire in particular. 5 years ago, you may recall, they were the godsend of wind towers in the coastal area. In fact, did such a good job of carting those pylons in, they wrecked their roads, and we lost our timber impacted road funding as the $80 million had to be found to fix those roads. Well, within the last fortnight, the people of Moyne at both Hawkesdale and Mortlake, and at Mortlake there were 500 people turned up, and they directed their council to reject the current planning application they've got down there. The examples that they used is South Australia, for a start, that the wind towers over there in South Australia, and we all know that from the newspapers, couldn't meet the demand of the community. In fact, the demand was so poor from the wind towers that without anybody publicising the matter, the power to drive South Australia came from the Latrobe Valley, from coal-powered stations. Now, neither government in Victoria or South Australia advertised it, but everybody in the valley knew that 58% of the power going into South Australia to keep their lights on was coming from Gippsland. Mightn't have been clean and green, but it was coming from Gippsland. The concerns that were raised at Mortlake was the Minister and Del, don't ask me to tell you all that, have granted an exemption for preparing an environmental effects statement, despite being in an environmentally sensitive area down there. So the government has the power to ignore us anyway. We can only make a recommendation, we won't be making the final decision. And the height of the towers is an area of concern, and in the application that we had with our business papers, made mention of its proximity to the Yarram airstrip. But what it didn't mention, that the impediment to firefighting for the CFA, they've got to use the air to try and put fires out. We all know that we're a fire-prone state, we're getting warned all the time, and this is going to cause considerable impact if we get a bushfire down there. The gentleman who spoke up here before spoke about the effect on South Gippsland on the Bald Hills. I don't know whether you know it, councillors, but 10 people who have been severely impacted from the Bald Hills have now taken Supreme Court action against the South Gippsland Shire. And they're seeking substantial damages for, I'll get these things for the incessant turbine-generated low-frequency noise. They're claiming substantial damage for the loss of enjoyment of their homes, plus other aggravated damage. And when you get a spare time, I recommend that you listen to ABC Radio Adelaide on the 14th of September, where they checked on rural communities with public health disasters like Cape Bridgewater, Wowbro and Macarthur. So there is general concern in the community as the wind turbines become more established. The impacts are being felt in the community, and the community are rebelling. And I believe that we have a duty of care to the ratepayers of our shire that live in this area to protect them from this obscene noise. And if this motion gets defeated, I'm going to move that this matter lay on the table until the decision of the Supreme Court in relation to the South Gippsland Bald Hills wind farm is delivered.
Thank you. Councillor Rossetti.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Neil and Graham for your presentations. I think they're ugly things, and having them close to your home, they're horrible. Yeah. Anyway, I did drive up recently, Mayor, around Tura, the hills of Tura, to go and visit some people there, and they certainly are something that's I think out of place in those areas. That being said, there's a couple of main points here. One is, since the South Gippsland case where they actually, councils had the ability to approve or disapprove, we no longer have it. This is a state government decision. Our letter is not even actually saying they should approve it. The submission is written, doesn't actually indicate that we will support it. It says if a permit is issued, these are the conditions and the considerations we think you should be taking into account. So we're simply telling the state government that if you are going to do what you've got the right to do, and we've got no right to stop them do it, we can't do it, we've got no legal ability to stop them doing it. If you are going to do this, well, you need to take into consideration exactly what the two presentations are about tonight, because that's the limit of our ability. Look, we can bang the table and be a protest group, absolutely. What we want to get, though, is an outcome that actually suits the people in that area. And bang the table and saying no, I know what the impact would be at state government. It would be completely ignored. But if we come through with a rational argument about what we think they should be considering the decision that they make, and that is what this motion is saying, we should submit what the concerns are of our community to the state government, who are the decision maker in this process. I think that's the proper and right thing for us to do. And certainly the encouragement that has been given already to other community members to speak directly to the local representatives, to Danny O'Brien, to anyone else in the state government they can get the ear of. We should be doing that. Not only if they're being illegal, I mean, if they're illegally quoting the kilometre not from the edge to the edge but from the centre to the centre, well, that should be a pretty easy one to pull them up on. But the greater impact of that, the submission that we've written in this letter here, that is the motion on the table. The letter actually says that not just considering the noise impacts, but considering the ongoing noise impacts, making sure that noise impacts that have been quoted and investigated are the ones that are ongoing, and that doesn't just suddenly sneak up with other impacts. So, yes, I would much rather this one, the Star of the Sea, it'd be much better to have that out of town. I don't particularly like them in town. I don't like them around houses. I think the kilometre distance is way too small. Can I do anything about it? Well, no. State government have made their mind up. They've got that process in their hands. But can we express strongly the concerns and issues that our community is seeing? Absolutely, we can. And that's what this submission is doing. The submission is saying, well, we can't stop you doing it, but if you're going to do it, make sure you've got these permit conditions in there. Because that's one way that you can control what happens in that to get a better outcome for the community. Thanks.
Councillor Mann, would you like to respond, or anybody else?
Thank you, Mayor. As a councillor and resident of the area, I'm very aware of the community's concerns regarding the proposed wind farm. I'm also very aware of the fracturing that has occurred within the community at the present time, which I feel is very sad. And I'm also aware of the potential impacts upon the environment, particularly when it's on the edge of a Ramsar site as well. At the end of the day, however, the council is not the planning authority for the wind farm application. That rests with the Minister of Planning ultimately. However, I do agree that council put forward a submission. I believe that the submission that they have drafted covers a lot of very relevant issues that may also not have been considered by members of the community, and I'm fully supportive of this going through and being submitted to the Minister, as I believe that it's very important that we are represented, and should the opportunity come to actually being at a table to discuss this, I think we need to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marr. Is anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor McCubbin, do you want to sum up?
Yes, I do. And I thank very much Councillor Hull for raising those issues. I think it's very important that those issues be heard, and very much a clear part of this this thing is to ensure that the people who have come here tonight, and indeed Councillor Hull's issues, are brought into the general, brought to the Minister. And obviously the Minister, as Councillor Rossetti has quite clearly pointed out, it's obviously the Minister will be ultimately making that decision. If I can just counter a couple of things perhaps. You mentioned the South Australia example, and indeed wind energy by far is producing, I think now about 45% of the South Australian energy needs, and you're absolutely right, there were some reliability issues. Elon Musk, I think, has come to the fore with a new battery down there, which has improved that. And indeed, it's interestingly in the South Australian example where the Liberal government, when they previous to the election suggested that they were going to remove or change the policy on that, now that they're actually in government and things are working pretty well, are actually right behind, my understanding is, the new wind power. Also interesting, the number of wind projects which are actually occurring in the state of Victoria right now. My understanding is I think there's 15 that are currently operating within the state of Victoria, 3 down here within the Gippsland area, the remaining in Western Victoria. There are 5 that are under construction and another 14 that are going through the approvals process. I absolutely agree with Councillor Hull that we need to look at interest with Supreme Court actions, but certainly the rise of wind power is happening. There are wind power stations happening all over the state. And we are not going to be immune to that. So whether the Minister agrees or doesn't agree with this, one thing is certain, and that is that the future is about renewable energy and it's about wind power. And I absolutely agree with the people who've come up here. It's important to say we agree with wind power, but you need to get it in the right spot. And I think the Minister must very carefully look at their objections and ensure that they meet the principles contained under the Act. But again, should this go ahead, as I said before, it's providing 45,000 homes with energy into the future. That's an excellent thing. Local jobs, local farm employment and income for those people, and indeed, through the Memorandum of Understanding, a significant community benefit at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Okay, the motion is carried.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to?
Yeah, I do. Can you call that again? You haven't done it.
A division?
Division, yeah. Yeah, you do a division.
We call the division. Those in favour? The move. Oh, I'll call out the names. Yeah, they're all unanimous, yes, but we need, as a division, you need the names as well. Yeah. So we called Councillor Hall, Councillor Hall, Councillor Marr, Councillor Rossetti, right, yeah, Councillor Crossley, Councillor Bye, Councillor McCubbin, and Councillor Ripper. So recorded.
My apologies. It's been such a long time since I called out division. I couldn't remember the name.
That's it. If I can just bring people's attention to the attachment 1, which is the draft letter that actually outlines what both Councillor Marr and Councillor McCubbin stated, that we're not approving the submission, we're approving our submission, our letter of concerns to the Minister, and it clearly covers quite a few of the issues that you raised, and also other issues as well. So just make sure that you do read that accompanying attachment. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, and if you wish to leave now, you're quite welcome to, and we can forward you a copy of that attachment if you haven't already received one.
I'll ask John to get people's details, and we'll make sure they get our submission to the final submission.
Oh, I'm sorry, you don't have that opportunity at the moment. If you want to see John Webstale, the officer up there, and so you may leave the meeting if you don't want to stay on further, and thank you for your submission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item C3.2, which is the planning scheme amendment for C100 Yarram Butter Factory. Councillor Marr.
I move that Council request the Minister for Planning to prepare and approve Amendment C100, referred to Attachment 1, to the Wellington Planning Scheme in accordance with Section 8.1 and Section 24 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Rossetti. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Marr.
This is an historical mapping oversight that's been more recently identified. It refers to the Heritage Overlay Schedule 27, HO27, at 40 Commercial Road, Yarram, which is the site of the Yarram Butter Factory. This amendment endeavours to include the whole of the building and its curtilage, which is the area of land attached to a house or building. As you can see, it is currently over half of that area. So this is essentially what we are trying to fix. The amendment is also correcting references of 13 places that were incorrectly numbered in the Victorian Heritage Register. And it's important to note that consent has been obtained from the landowner Saperto with regard to this change. Just a little bit about the Yarram Butter Factory. It was commenced to be built in 1908 and was completed in 1909, and essentially it is what we see today. On page 231 of the agenda, there's a brief history. An era has passed by Ron Nicol and the Yarram and District Historical Society, Inc., which gives a lovely background as to the heritage of the Yarram Butter Factory and what it meant to the town of Yarram. What it does show is that the butter factory has played a significant role in Yarram's history and its township, and it certainly needs to be protected so that it is still there in future days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marr. Item C3.3, the July monthly planning decisions. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I move that Council note the report on recent planning permit trends and planning application determinations between 1st July and 31st August 2018.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? So, Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. Look, the statutory planners have delegated authority under the Planning Environment Act 1987 to make planning decisions, including the issue of planning permits, amend permits, extensions of time, etc. And a copy of the planning permit decisions made between the 1st of July and 31st of August is attached, along with an overview of the recent planning permit trends. If we refer to the attachments, we note the distribution of planning approvals across the municipality. And for my part, it's particularly pleasing to note the continuing interest along our magnificent and pristine coastal locations. And again, as Councillor Marr mentioned earlier, the focus on broiler farm activity is covered with a permit application there, which again continues to strengthen our economy.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Moving on to item C4. Item C4.1, Westsail Airport Runway Extension Works. Councillor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the Council delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officer to enter into a contract within the existing approved budget for contract 2018-025 construction of the Westsail Airport Runway Extension.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Bye. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. This contract is for the extension of the runway to 1.8 kilometres long, 1,800 metres, or in fact just over a mile, which of course Roger Bannister completed in 4 minutes in 1954. I used to be able to run a mile, but certainly aren't able to do that anymore. But it is part of a great support we've been given to what is a terrific employer in our area. The RAF base has long been supported by council and the community. In earlier days of being able to stop any development going impinging on their airspace, to more recently with the support that council gave to the attraction of first the interim basic flight training and now the basic flight training coming in from Tamworth, which almost doubles the permanent population out of the base, which is quite extraordinary. The good thing about all of this income is it's drought-proof, and it also adds a real variety to the community in terms of the skilled base of people coming in and going out and coming back in again. But this airport extension is going to benefit the users of the airport and indeed the emergency services, but it's been primarily funded through mainly state government contribution to support the RAF base and the basic flight training, as a lot of the other elements out there with the fuel farms, etc., have been done. So it's very exciting to see this continued support for this local employer, and it really cements us as being the air town. We are the only active RAF base in Victoria, and it's one of the RAF bases that is very well supported by the community, which not all RAF bases around Australia can do. So this work I think we should be very proud of, and we should be very proud of the relationship that council and the community all have with the RAF, and vice versa. It's great to see this work taking place. I won't be getting my pilot's licence to take off from that or do the first run on it, but certainly look forward to it being well utilised.
Thank you, Councillor Rossetti. Moving on to item C4.2, revocation of unused roads licensed government road east of lot 2PS 613367, submission committee hearing. I do believe we have somebody from the gallery who wishes to speak. Yes, so if you can just state your name for the recording, and 3 minutes. Thank you.
My father-in-law is Dr. Wooden, for whom this protracted matter is a source of great stress and financial cost. Before Council excludes the most important points of the Wooden submission to the subcommittee, namely the right of a property owner to gain lawful access to their own property. The land was acquired by Dr. Wooden from Mr. Hodge in 1977. That land had established title and subdivision with access from Ryan's Road over public land, a disused road. The land was acquired with the express purpose of exercising that access. That access has been exercised continuously for over 40 years by Dr Wooden, his family and parties authorised by Dr Wooden. Since 1999, one of those authorised parties is Optus to provide telecommunication infrastructure to the local area. The council report suggests that access prior to a 2007 reorganisation of boundaries was from Millers Road. This is not the case. It's not the case in practice. The access has been for 40 years, not 10 years as suggested in the council report, and it's not the case in terms of the lawful rights of a property owner. The land acquired in 1977 was not landlocked. It had a plan of subdivision with access from Ryans Road and then carriageway across the public land of the disused road. It's not the practice of councils or state planning authorities to approve landlocked title of land, and it doesn't apply in this case either. Dr Wooden acquired the land in 1977 with established rights of access from Ryans Road. Only recently that right of access has been transgressed, and transgressed wrongly. I cannot understand why the report before council does not address this transgression. In my working life, I was a senior officer, council officer for over 30 years. In boundary or planning or neighbourhood disputes, the first rule is to ask, what is the legal and statutory situation? Are anyone's rights being impinged? What is council's role? I'm pretty certain that a council should be very active in the protection of an owner's rights to access his property or to offer his property for sale without vexatious interference. There are other matters in the report which I don't have time to address, but in detail, it states that implementing the current requirements of the Section 173 agreement will cost Dr Wooden, the landowner, around $15,000 to $20,000. He's obtained a quote for works of around $3,000. The alternate proposal has an estimated cost of $6,000 to $8,000, for which neither party agrees to contribute. That's new news to us. No estimate of costs for the alternative was provided to Dr Wooden, and to what extent is that cost estimate a firm one? Does it include everything, surveying, subdivision, legal costs, fencing and access? But more importantly, does it count for the fact that the alternate option would require the transfer and approval by the relevant state department of the existing public land from one location to another location? The time taken for that approval, and I believe that the time taken for that approval would be significant, requiring probably minister's approval or minister's delegate approval, and it doesn't address interim arrangements during this approval process. I'm speaking in support of Dr Wooden, but these are my words. His rights as a property owner are ignored in the council report, even though this information was provided to the subcommittee. He's suffering considerable stress through the non-resolution of what should be a straightforward matter. That is, a property owner's right to access their own land across the public land designated for that purpose. And as shown in every council-approved plan of subdivision since the original purchase of the land in 1977. He's suffering financial damage in his legitimate efforts to sell his own land through opportunity costs of delays caused by others, hostile actions, losing potential buyers. My advice to my father-in-law is to consider his legal options, especially as a report before council has ignored the Woodens family submission, does not resolve the matter, and will in fact protract the matter even further. Thank you for...
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the gallery wishing to speak to this item?
I would like to have, but I wasn't given notice to actually do that, so I wasn't prepared, I'm sorry. Because there was a lot of things I needed to actually say that was in contradiction to that we weren't invited to, so I'm sorry.
Okay. Do we have a mover of that motion then? Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to move the council receive and consider the report from the Submissions Committee in relation to the revocation of the unused roads licence east of PC 377389 Tringala, and 2, Having regard to the written submissions both for and against the revocation of the unused road licence, each of Lot 2P was the PS 613367, and the submission committee finding that access is required from Rhymes Road, PC 377389. The Chief Executive Officer investigate further to ascertain if an agreed position between the two submitters can be reached to provide an improved and safer access point rather than the unused road.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Hall, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A little bit of a quandary because some of the information that has just come out is not the information that I've had in relation to times and dates. And I'm just wondering, Morris, can you leave your notes so that we can... All right, thank you. At this stage, Mayor, in the motion to ask the CEO to become involved as investigate in some way, shape or form, rather than elaborate on information that's contradictory to what's been presented, I'll just leave it as a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. That's probably a wise move to follow forward on that, and certainly we'll get that information.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, the motion that Councillors just approved allows us to do that, so we'll certainly follow up that information that's been presented today and make sure that's absolutely correct before we go further.
Where are we at? That's one. Next one. Item C 4.3. Was it? Yes, sorry. You may leave if you... Thank you. Moving to C 4.3, sale of discontinued road part, former road at the rear of 85 Fitzroy Street. Sale. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I move that pursuant to Section 189 of the Local Government Act, Council sells the section of discontinued road at the rear of 85 Fitzroy Street sale to the abutting owner by private treaty in accordance with Wellington Shire Council Policy 3.3.5, sale, exchange and acquisition of land.
Seconded by Councillor McCubbin. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Thank you. Do you wish to speak?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Back on the 6th of February 1990, the former City of Sale considered a report and resolved to discontinue and sell sections of this road, and subsequently a Government Gazette notice to this effect was published on the 14th of February 1990. That was fantastic, but unfortunately this little piece of land on this discontinued road was missed. So what we have done is we've gone to the two abutting landowners and asked if either of them would like to buy this little bit of discontinued road. One of the landowners declined, and the other landowner of 85 Fitzroy Street declared they would like to buy it. So we have duly decided to sell that little piece of discontinued road that was missed back in 1990. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bye. Moving on to item C 4.4, Cansick Street Rosedale Pavement Works contract. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to move the Council adopt the recommendations contained in the attached confidential tender evaluation report at item F1.3, contract 2018-076, Cansick Street Rosedale Pavement Works, and as part 2 as documented on the agenda.
Do I have a second for that? Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. I can now announce the successful tenderer as Clint Kelly Excavations Proprietary Limited, and congratulations to them. Councillor Hall, do you wish to speak on this item?
Oh, Rosedale will be very excited, Mayor, to see some work going on around the town. And this is just to repair some failed pavement between Hood Street and Island Crescent, I think it was. And the pavement contract, it's part of our ongoing works around the Shire. We pick up, I suppose, ageing infrastructure and we try to maintain it to a nice, safe standard. So yes, it'll be well received in Rosedale.
Thank you. Moving on to item C4.5, Placement Names Committee. Councillor McCullum.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the Council receive and note the minutes of the Place Names Committee meeting held on the 14th of August 2018, and 2, that letters be sent out to owners of properties abutting the unnamed road off Bangwarden Road, Perry Bridge, and that it be advertised that the road is proposed to be named after Charles Edward Marriott, who was lost and did not return to Perry Bridge after he served in the First World War. If no negative response is received, then apply to the Office of Geographic Names to gazette the name Marriott Lane. 3, that letters be sent out to owners of properties abutting the unnamed road off Glenmaggie Road Extension, and that it be advertised that the road is proposed to be named after the 4 brothers, Alexander, David, Robert, who did not return, and Thomas Langlands, who came from Glenmaggie and served in the First World War. If no negative response is received, then apply to the Office of Geographic Names to gazette the name Langlands Lane. 4, that letters be sent out to owners of properties abutting the rear of 300 to 310 Raymond Street Sale, and if there are no negative objections, then apply to the Office of Geographic Names to gazette the common property entrance Dove Court. 5, the name Element Crescent be approved for use in the Cabanes estate in Sale. 6, that a response be written to the Sale RSL supporting the name of the shared path along Alberton Road from Summerton Park Road, Sale, to the RAAF base as the Fuller Ruse Path. 7, the new subdivisional road off Shaw's Lane in Rosedale be called Spine Bill Court.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor McCullum.
Thank you very much, and I'm aware that that I can't be as long as I'd like to be, but I'll try to keep this short. Firstly, my apologies. The Place Names Committee, of which I chair, and I have 2 most excellent councillors, Councillor Marr and Councillor Rossetti, on board, have many times tried to name this road off Bangwarden Road from Perry Bridge. It's a very small road leading from what was the old church down to the river there. We've tried on several occasions, and I'll take full responsibility for that. We keep coming up with names which get knocked back. The last one we tried was Stone Road. Unfortunately, Stony Lane and No Stones Boulevard or something is within 26 kilometres of that. They are roads sitting within a forestry estate, and according to the name of Geographic Place Names, it's too close for us to call it. So we had to reject the name Stone, and so therefore we're naming it after Marriott Lane. Now, Charles Edward Marriott, this came out during the Anzac project, which I thank some local historians who are working on this. He was a gentleman who served within the First World War in France and was killed. He certainly lived in the Perry area, and certainly a worthwhile name to be considered, so Marriott will be done there. We were also asked to consider a name in Glenmaggie, and in befitting the Anzac project, we looked at the name Langlands Lane. It's a name of a family attributed to the Glenmaggie region. Alexander, David, Robert and Thomas all served in the First World War in various parts of the war, some in France and some in Gallipoli. They were in the area as when they were here, they were auctioneers and farmers, and they moved then to... and Robert actually is a really interesting story, and who was killed at Gallipoli. He was killed on the 26th of April. In fact, deserted from his ship, I should say. He actually deserted. He didn't get on the first landing of the Anzac, and he was so upset that he wasn't allowed to be on part of the first landing. He actually deserted from his ship, jumped overboard, swum towards Anzac Cove, this is true, and joined the 7th Battalion, of which his uncle was in at the time. Joined the 7th Battalion because he wanted to fight for Australia. And unfortunately, on that day that he had gone and fought, he was killed. Huge, amazing story at 22 years of age. So a young man of Glenmaggie area who fought and died for his country. And I can think of no more fitting a name than Langlands to commemorate their service. The letter be sent to the next one is Dove Court. Many of you might think that Dove Court actually has an official name. It does not. It's always been a name that has been placed there. And whilst we're not actually in the habit of naming places, it's a court, but it's not really a court. But the the building owner who owns several of the places around there has suggested that it's confusing and that people don't know where to find it, and that we should officiate that name, Dovecourt. Well, we've agreed with them, and we will now take steps to put geographic names. We live in a land of Google now, and if it's not officially recognised by the geographic names, then Google doesn't pick it up, and if you're looking for Dovecourt, you can't find it. So we think it's a reasonable argument, and we're going to move forward with that Dovecourt. The name Element Crescent is approved for the Cabanes estate. It was suggested by the subdivider, and I think everybody knows that the Elements have been a strong and worthwhile name representing this community for some time. We're very proud to include them within the naming of that subdivision. This actually, number 6, is the Aerodrome Road path. It actually commemorates the name of 2 people killed close by. Some years ago, the council did agree to these names. This just confirms that. We won't be placing an actual name on that, but we're suggesting to the Sale RSL that we have no problem with them calling it the Fuller's Ruse path to commemorate those gentlemen on that path. And of course, the last one, Shaw's Lane in Rosedale. It was suggested by the subdivider a number of names. We quite like Spinebill, representing a local bird. Thank you. Spinebill. Did I get that right? Spinebill.
Thank you. Small bit, tiny bit. Thank you. Thank you. Item C5, General Manager Community and Culture. Item C5.1, Maffra Recreational Reserve Committee Management Meeting Minutes. Councillor Ripper.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council receive the minutes from the Maffra Recreation Reserve Committee of Management's General Meeting held on the 6th of August 2018.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that? Councillor Hall. Is that motion opposed? Motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. You're fine. Moving on to item C5.2, the Cameron Sporting Complex Committee of Management minutes. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to move the Council receive the minutes from the Cameron Sporting Complex Committee of Management's Annual General Meeting held on the 23rd of August 2018.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Rossetti. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, they're brief minutes. It was an annual general meeting. The election of office bearers was reasonably good, except they couldn't get or nobody wanted to take on the position of Vice President, but the Treasurer and Secretary, and Peter Anderson has been returned as the Chair, as he's been there for I don't know how long, nearly as long as he's been a solicitor, I think. But like all Section 86 committees, come December, they open up for any new names and nominations, and we'll look forward to seeing that happen.
Thank you. No urgent business on that? Item E, any further chat room comments? Nothing in the chat room. Do we have any further gallery comments? No? So I'll declare the meeting closed at 4:13 p.m. Thank you very much for your attendance, councillors, officers and gallery.